everyone, welcome to Friend Crash. I'm Amber Akilla. Today we're joined by Miss Elle, aka 14 Strike.
Yeah, that's it.
How are you, my dear?
I'm good. I've been really busy lately.
Mm-hmm.
I've been keeping myself busy. You could almost say too busy, but such is life.
Wow, in this economy, we love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's start with a little intro about you. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm Elle. I'm 22 years old and I have an Instagram called 14 at 14 strike at 14strk. I guess I get described as an influencer, even though I feel iffy about the term because who am I really influencing? But whatever. I do other things. I'm a freelance stylist. I recently picking up some hobbies, drawing. I'm trying to get into sewing. What else do I do? I work at a real job with a real company.
Mm-hmm.
But that's boring, so I don't talk about that. And uh, yeah, I think that's it.
Cute. I mean, long story short, we met through Instagram, but
hmm
I can't remember when. It would have been a few years ago now, though.
I think it might have been either 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, around then.
Wait, I know. I think it might have been 2016 because the first time we met, I had my black hair with a red streak in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we met, and where did we go? We met up, then we went to the arcade.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah,
That was like 2017 when we eventually
2017
met.
then. Yeah,
Yeah, so maybe we like connected on Instagram in 2016 and then we met in 2017.
yeah, so yeah.
So cute. Okay.
I know, it's actually been, what, it's been like 3 years.
Mm-hmm. That's wild.
That's that's eons in social media.
Yeah. How
For
would you
real.
describe like the growth process for you going from like zero followers and starting on Instagram, and how did you kind of develop your style or aesthetic, or how did you grow your following? When did you start to kind of post not just in like a personal, like to friends and family way?
Before I made my Instagram when I was 17 in year 12. Before that, I had a regular, like personal Instagram. But then I remember being like on that Instagram and being like, oh, like I'm not really into this. I feel like I can't share what I actually like to the people that follow me because they were just, I don't know, random chicks from my school and people I don't, wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I didn't really care about them. So I was like, I deleted that Instagram. And then I made this other Instagram, 14 Strike, which actually no one knew that I made it. And I just like posted things that I liked. At the time, I just posted, like, oh, like, here's the sky, here's a book I'm reading. But I guess this is 2015. At that time, I would say my Instagram fell into what we would call the
Mm-hmm.
pastel aesthetic Instagram. It was, there's other bitches who post a picture of like a PowerPoint and it was something like, hey guys, I've been just listening to XYZ today, like how have your days been? Like super cute, super pastel, a lot of people who were into like K-pop and like, Muji and Tumblr,
Yeah.
like,
Kanken.
egg socks, pumpkins. It was that yeah, it was that realm of Instagram. And then I just started, I don't know, connecting with people online, like just like, like talking about our interests. Then I eventually started, I was like obsessed with Instagram at that point because this was year 12. I was using Instagram as like my stress relief from studying.
Mm. That's
So
so
I
wild.
was
I didn't have
spending,
Instagram when I was in high school. Like I finished high school
yeah,
and Instagram came after that.
yeah, definitely. So I was using that as like a way to, I don't know, basically connect with people because most of my IRL time was spent studying because my mom was really strict about studying for the HSC.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I was using that. Then I started to post pictures of myself. and like my outfits at that time. And then I was like, oh, like these photos actually doing like pretty well. Like I feel like people like to see. People were saying like, oh, I love your outfits. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just start posting my outfits more. And honestly, at the time, I was obsessed with Instagram. Like I was on it like all the time, all day, commenting, following people. So I amassed maybe like, I don't know, maybe a few hundred or maybe around 2,000 or something like that, pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, yeah, I was in that kind of area of like Asian Instagram. Then I started becoming mutuals with a lot of girls who had bigger accounts, who were in that like subsection of Instagram, kind of like very
Yeah.
soft, um, Asian soft Asian chick, whatever. Then I don't know, it just progressed. I met my friend Tara in before first year of uni, and then at that time, because she had a lot of followers than me, and we started hanging out a lot. I got a lot of followers through her, and then I was at that time my style was changing to not be very soft and like more edgy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then it really at that time like 2017 to 2018 my account grew a lot because
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, like at that time what we call an influencer right now like didn't exist. There wasn't this concept of an influencer or a,
Mm-hmm.
so low-key like me, Tara, and some of the other like mutuals that we know were doing technically like fashion influencing before there was an influencer market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I feel like it was really easy for me to gain followers.
Mm.
But honestly, I've hit a massive plateau of my Instagram growth. Like I haven't gained followers for like the last year or whatever, but it doesn't really phase me anymore. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
such is
Like,
life.
I think this is something that we were going to talk about, like our relationship with social media
Mm,
and how it's changed over time. Like, I think when
yeah.
you are able to monetize your presence online, like, you do feel like there is some pressure, but at the same time, like, I think it's become much easier for me to create distance between those things or like not care as much about how like your online presence plays into your personal worth, I think, versus like your commercial worth, you know?
Yeah, I think it's definitely as I've grown older or as I've used Instagram more, I've realized how important it is to distance yourself from tying your self-worth to an app. That's how you stay
Literally.
sane, baby.
Yeah, exactly. I think like for me, it's always annoying when I can tell when like my value as a DJ is assessed according to the number of followers that I have because I don't think that's a
Mm,
real reflection of any DJ skill. Based on the work that I've done in Shanghai, it seems to be more about like the experience that I've had as a DJ and how that plays into me being viable for a gig. And then of course also when it comes to fashion work, like just being like a female.
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but yeah, I feel like out in the West, when I look at like Instagram DJ culture, it's like, okay, miss, I'm not even gonna go. I'm not even gonna go down
No,
that.
no, I completely understand you. I feel like we've definitely seen. I say this as someone who is new DJ, but I'm friends with a billion DJs. Not in a, I don't know, just so many cool girls in Sydney, especially, um, who are DJs. There's a really awesome female DJ scene out here, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely I feel like just generally people have seen that rise of like DJ celebrity or like DJ persona. I like this whole idea of being like a, especially for I guess for girls, a cool girl DJ, like, like I don't know, like a Peggy Goo style DJ where you're like, oh, she's so hot and she's also a DJ and like she does this. Not to rag on Peggy Goo, at all, but like, do you get what I mean? Like someone like you're a DJ, but it also obviously helps that if you are more conventionally attractive or if you are able to curate an Instagram aesthetic or Instagram platform that people feel is kind of aspirational.
Mm.
Because I guess, as you said, and it comes into obviously what I do as well. Like, it is about how you can, I guess, market yourself or how you can appear visually because yeah, it's very apparent because we live in visual culture.
Exactly. Like people will, yeah, it's like don't hate the player, hate the game, basically. Because at the end of the day, like people are still, they still want to see shit before they want to like read or hear shit, I think. And um, like for me, I didn't have Instagram when I first started DJing, I don't think. The concept of like an Instagram DJ didn't even exist. Like the concept of a female DJ being as successful as a male DJ was foreign. Like barely. I could name like one or two female DJs that had reached like critical mass, maybe. Um, and yeah, so it was really interesting when like that whole Instagram DJ movement began because I was like, okay, this I enjoyed being able to go to the club like basically in sweatpants and like my pajamas and nobody looking at me. And now it's like I feel
Yeah.
like you have to put a performance on, but I've just learned to accept that the market changes and what people want changes as well. So
Ah, the market.
yeah, adapt or die, basically.
Literally, I feel like that. It's so funny. Like, okay, followers don't matter to me. Like, I know likes shouldn't be indicative of anything, but obviously when you put something out there that you feel like is nice and no one sees it just because of the way the internet's set up, of course you're gonna feel disappointed because you're like, oh, like I think
Mm-hmm.
this is really cool, but it's frustrating that no one can see it. And my friend was like,
Yeah,
oh, like, yeah, you should get into reels because then you get a lot of, then people start seeing your stuff again. And I was like, ah, adapt or die, huh? Like,
yeah. I never thought about that in terms of actually being on Instagram. Like, I guess for me, in terms of like DJing, it's like, well, if me like dressing, like putting the way that I dress out there is going to get the attention of a brand that is going to give me the resources in order to like run a workshop or do a party, then that's better than me being broke.
yeah, no,
But yeah, it's
definitely.
interesting. Like the Instagram algorithm, I don't even really understand it, but when I have seen information about how it prioritizes like people's faces over like non faces and like the times that you post and all
Yeah.
that shit, I'm just like, what? Like, I actually can never predict if what I'm posting is going to do well or not because all the shit that I post and I'm like, this is a flop or like, or YOLO, it always gets more likes than the shit. I'm like, this is such a cute picture. I love it. And then it's like, okay.
Yeah,
Who
I
has
think,
bad taste?
okay.
You or me?
Them, of course. I don't know,
Yeah.
it's funny. The whole Instagram algorithm, I feel like it's like a, you could write a Bible on that. It's like, um,
Have you seen
yeah,
The Social
this myth.
Dilemma, the documentary on Netflix?
No, but actually, my mom watched it
Wow.
and
Yeah, you
I
should
could
watch it.
hear it in the background, and I was like, hmm.
Okay, wait.
Don't know if I want to dig into that hole.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's like when I talk about it with other people, the way that these platforms have been built and the people that built them, they were only thinking in terms of how to keep people on the app and how to monetize. And the people that feature in the documentary, they're all like ex co-founders or executives that probably cashed in and then realized like the monster that they contributed to, and now they're kind of like it needs to be regulated or it's really fucked up, it's really
Yeah.
addictive. Like even one of the CEOs was like, he worked for Pinterest. He's like, I would come home from work and then I wouldn't be able to get off Pinterest. Like I couldn't, I helped build this platform and I couldn't even like
Hmm.
mentally detach from it. Like we're just so primitive, the human mind.
No, I completely understand. I feel like it's obvious, and I think we all know that these apps are built in a way that cashes in on people's validation and people's wanting to feel like someone's listening or someone's like, hey, I'm out here, like, oh, like I see you, like, and yeah, it's sad, but also it's like, I do feel like when a lot of people do talk about Instagram, it can get very doom and gloom being like, oh, Instagram's so depressing, like blah blah blah. And I feel like there definitely is a pressure on Instagram as compared to, let's say, Twitter, to definitely present your best life. Like I'm always living my best life. Like, oh
Mhm.
my god, booked and busy. Like I'm doing XYZ. Like this is so exciting and fun. I feel like that is definitely more apparent on Instagram than other apps. Especially, of course, it depends what part of Instagram you're on and how you use the platform, because I obviously
Mm.
know that there are many people who are very candid and open about their emotional life on Instagram and how they're feeling, whether but personally that's not how I use the app. Not that it's not okay, but I personally wouldn't use Instagram to be like, oh hey guys, I've been feeling really shit lately. And even though, like, I don't know, I guess there's this it's like this thing of like, what is it to mean to be real, and what does it mean to be authentic? And I would
Mm.
always try to think that I am authentic online, but it's also like, I think for me, I like to call myself publicly private, where I'm very public about so many things I do, like what I'm listening to, where I eat, where I'm going, this and that, likes and dislikes, but I am private about other things, obviously, like, where I live, like where I work, my family members, my own emotional life. And that isn't because I don't
Mm.
want to be real, but I think it's important for me to draw the boundaries between who I am and who I am online.
Mm.
So yeah, it's not that I don't feel comfortable talking about my emotions online, but that is not what I am there for.
Yeah, I don't really follow that many people that I don't personally know or like don't have like some sort of positive influence on me, whether that's like a platform or like a media platform or an individual. So I don't even know like what the real scope of influencer land is, because like if I do follow an
Mm.
influencer, like I probably know them personally. So it's like a different
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like relationship that you have when you're like looking at what they're doing. So like, oh, that's my friend. Um,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think when I first started using the app, it was definitely like I was just following what other people were following, people that I didn't know, people that have very highly curated lives. And I think that comes from, I would say like we kind of are like on the cusp of generations, but I feel like when I was growing up
Mm.
and there wasn't this kind of social media, it was very like people were very image obsessed and like putting forward your best self in public, and
Mm.
like the way that celebrities were viewed, it was always they were always very private, and there was always this huge gap between like the audience and the public figure. But then as time has gone on,
Mm,
it's kind of like
definitely.
narrowed down. So I think it's been interesting for me to see how that's kind of like been deconstructed over time, and the ways that like now the younger generation of children on the internet are so much more
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
open, I guess, or like the idea of like
Mm.
posting a photo of yourself with like acne maybe like 5 or 10 years ago was like not a thing. Do you feel like you have to present your best self to your audience?
Sometimes it does feel like that. It's like, I know that I actually don't have to,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that it's fine to profess online that I'm not doing okay, or maybe I haven't been feeling the best. But rather than doing that, what I like to do nowadays is more like, if I don't feel like, if I don't feel that good, I just don't post. I feel like before, even literally just like 2 months ago, or like 2, 3 months ago, I was like, okay, like I need to post every single day on Instagram. Like, I need to post a photo every single day. I need to post on stories every single day. Like, oh, like this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm eating. Blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. And then, I don't know, I think it got to a point where obviously there was a lot of, I guess, there was a lot of social things happening. Um, in terms of America and other things, where obviously then a lot of people took a step back online and were posting different things, and I was like, oh, it's so nice to not feel like I have to be ever present online,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels good. So after that, this is probably the healthiest approach I've had to Instagram, where I don't feel like I need to post every single thing that I do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can just exist, and it doesn't have to be on the internet.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think like my relationship is kind of different. Because when I was first on Instagram, I think actually no, I started using Snapchat first, and when I was on Snapchat, I was just taking the piss like
Mm.
at all times because I was just like get me the fuck out of Perth, and
No, yeah, yeah,
I think
totally.
for me it was like being able to laugh at myself is definitely one of the ways. It's definitely something that I find empowering, like being able to make myself laugh and keeping myself entertained, and then whether that translates to like people that see what I do online or not is like secondary. So I think when I started using Instagram, I definitely was more just like off the cuff, like with what I was doing, because I didn't really think about how that would play into building a following or like being able to monetize. So I still kind of carry that attitude, but I definitely have been thinking about like authenticity and realness and like how much of yourself do you need to be sharing, because I think the expectations that people have is also changing. I feel like there was a moment
Mm.
where I felt like people were just coming for any influencer that wasn't being like fully transparent and saying that they're not authentic when those are like kind of different things. Um, but now it's
Yeah.
like, what's the difference between being online and having that be a separate persona to who you actually are? Like, do you have to be clear about that? Because I think that's where people kind of start to have a problem when they feel like the person that they're following is really the way that they are offline
Yeah.
versus like people that are very clearly like performing
Mm.
for the internet. So I don't know which
Yeah.
I, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's super tricky. Like, I definitely like the way I use Instagram. I would say I don't try to be like cool and aloof. Do you get what I mean? Whatever I post, I fully 100% believe in. Even though I do think like this whole idea of an internet persona is kind of like, I guess, just like anything, we show different faces of ourselves to different people, whether we choose to, whether we do it knowingly or not. And
Mm,
I know that I can say this very clearly to people. I have no problem saying it. The me on Instagram is definitely played up, like, but it is still me.
yeah,
It
it's like
is just
it's a
like
part of
me
you,
at
just
my
like an
most.
extension that exists.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just like Elle Vavavoom. Like, I've had people tell me that one, I'm exactly like how I am online as I am in real life, or two, that I'm actually a lot more chill. Or I had one of my closest friends, um, she said to me, she didn't know about my Instagram, or she didn't follow me before we became friends. And after we obviously became friends, they started following me on Instagram, and they were like, "Oh, like if I had followed you on Instagram beforehand, I wouldn't necessarily think that we would be as good friends as we are based on how you are online," which I thought was interesting. But I could see why some people might find the way I conduct myself on the internet not that easy to digest, because I am very aware that I have a certain amount of followers. I obviously do work through Instagram, business wise, through brands and stuff like that, there is an expectation for me to post product or to XYZ. But that L is still the L here. It's definitely, at times, I feel like I go loco and I'm literally become, I feel myself like personaing, and I persona so hard. I'm like, I watch my own stories and I feel like I'm on a roller coaster and I can't get off. Like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah.
Like, you are so loco right now. Like, I just like channel all my like manic extrovert energy. I pour it into my Instagram and I can't even watch myself. I'm like, girl, what are you doing? You're getting drunk on your own. You're getting drunk on yourself right now. Like, do you kind of get what I mean by that when I say that? Yeah.
How do you feel about
Mm-hmm.
like growing up in Australia as an Asian, and
Mm-hmm.
how has your relationship with like your ethnicity and your cultural heritage changed over time? Because I was talking to someone today about how like a few years ago it wasn't cool to have an opinion about, or to have like, or to be sharing your own journey with racism or feminism or like your
Mm.
identity. But now it's definitely, um, people are more open to hearing those stories, and they want to feel like a
Mm.
sense of connection with people that look like them or are from the same place as them or have the same cultural background as them. So, how's that journey been for you?
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before. I think both of us went through similar things where you know, born and raised up in a white suburb. Not many other Asians. I went to schools that didn't have that many other Asian people. Um, I grew up very disconnected from my culture. I'm Chinese Indonesian, but I grew up with my mom, and her side of the family doesn't really identify as Chinese. More so, even though we're ethnically Chinese, they migrated to Indonesia a few generations ago. So I only grew up speaking Indonesian at home, eating Indonesian food, whereas my dad's side, um, still also a few generations in Indonesia, but still very tied to the Chinese culture, speak
Mm-hmm.
Hakka, um, yada 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 yada. But I grew up, yeah, in a white area. At that time, especially, you know, when we were younger, being Chinese was not cool. So I would almost say I was very not into being Chinese. And I was always telling people like, oh, I'm Indonesian, like I'm not Chinese, I'm Indonesian. Which at the time, yes, it made sense because I had no cultural ties to China.
Mm.
I spoke Indonesian at home. I ate Indonesian food. I went back to Indonesia every year. Yada yada yada. And then I was like also that wanting to be differentiate myself from I guess the other Asians in my area or school who were all Chinese. And at the time there
Mm-hmm.
was a kind of a big anti-Chinese sentiment in Australia. Um, so when I'd be like, "Oh, I'm from Indonesia," I'd be like, "Oh my God, that's so cool! Like, I love Bali. Like, you
Of
know,
course they
oh
were.
wow, Indonesia, that's so cool. Like, blah blah blah."
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Also, you know, grew up being like, "Oh, you're a cool Asian." Oh, I was
Mm.
definitely a lot of like typical self-hating thing. You know, I was like, "Oh, I'm not really Asian. Like, I'm bad at maths. Like, oh, like." I'm not that Asian. Like I don't hang out with other Asians. I like all my friends were white. And actually, what helped
Mm-hmm.
me become more comfortable with being Asian was that I got into K-pop when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
um, Maybe in like year 9 and year 10, this was when I guess Big Bang and like 21 were really popular. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my god, it's so cool. Like, whatever, like, they're Asians and like they're really cool. And during that time, there was starting to be more discourse around, I guess, what we would call representation, identity politics. I went on a trip to China with my dad when I was like 17, 18, and I was like, obviously when I went to China, everyone spoke to me in Mandarin, everyone saw me as and I was like, wait, I'm actually Chinese. I was like, oh, I forgot that I was Chinese. And then I started to obviously come to grips that I also am Chinese, and that's a part of my identity that I shouldn't be ashamed of anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten older, learned more about the world, learned more about, people in like society in general, I feel like I've let go a lot of those, what I would call baby diaspora angst,
Yeah.
where
I think
you
that's very
realize
much a stepping
now,
stone
yeah, it's
in terms of
important.
like
Obviously,
coming
it's so
into
important.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I definitely agree. Like 2016, 2017, like that was the beginning of the cultural appropriation
Mm,
discussion, I think. That's when people started to call
definitely.
out like native
Yeah,
headdress, wearing like
definitely.
braids,
Yeah,
and then also like appropriation um, of East Asian culture as well. But then, yeah, like we've talked about
exactly.
before, you kind of realize. I mean, when you become more comfortable with who you are, that kind of shit is just like,
Mm.
well, you just look corny. So. Jokes on you,
Yeah,
love.
it's like
I don't care.
as yeah, literally. Yeah, it's very. I've said this. I feel like that's diaspora diaper. Do you get what I mean? It's when you're a second gen kid and you're trying to grasp at the straws of what it means to be part of your culture. And obviously, visual culture is easy to just latch at and be like, well, like, this is
Mm,
mine. Um, Especially when we talk about, for example, East Asian cultural appropriation as compared to obviously the long history of Black appropriation. Like, you can't even begin to compare it. That's why
mm,
I find it very trifling, to be honest. And I feel like I find that a lot of people, especially our age, like especially if you're in your 20s, I get when you're like 17, 18, 17 to like 19, 20, this is like, you're just becoming an adult. But
mm,
when you're in your 20s, I feel, and you're still picking straws at, oh, they used a Chinese character and it doesn't mean the right thing. Like, or like, oh my god, like XYZ, like that's a blah blah blah, my culture, my culture. And it's like,
mm.
hey, baby, I know, but in the context of the greater world, there are so many other things we can talk about. So
Yeah,
many other
I
things we
think
can expend our energy on.
I think the fine line between like making fun of something versus being offended by it. And like when I see
Hmm.
people so adamant about
Yeah.
being offended by these like little things, it's like they I just see like how I maybe felt 5 years ago and how it just takes, like I said, being
Exactly.
able to, yeah, you're still like on the defense rather because you, like you said, you have like, you're clutching at straws. You're so desperate for representation that anything
Yeah.
that might take away from that feels like a personal attack. But when you're looking
Yeah,
more
yeah.
within yourself and in your community, then all that other shit
Mm,
has much less effect on you.
exactly. I feel like it's important. I feel like some people haven't come out of the diaspora diaper stage, or they need to contextualize things. Yes, it's
Mm,
it's it's lame when someone appropriates culture. I guess we are talking about East Asian culture, but I feel like when that is the only thing you care about, you are actually not doing a service to anybody. There is
yeah.
nothing you are saying. It is empty air. Why don't we talk about something more important? Like, I feel like a lot of these people who get really obsessed about the aesthetics of things, it seems like that's the only thing they care about. We can talk about a
Mm,
billion other things in the specifically the Asian community. We can talk about
yeah.
anti-blackness. We can talk about colorism. We can talk about the dynamic between East Asians and South Asians. We can talk about,
Mm,
XYZ, misogyny, whatever. And like that's all that and you're still upset about, you know, seeing a festival cheaper, like, hey,
Yeah, like even for me when
you're sad about Fox Eye?
yeah. That Fox Eye thing is
This is the
crazy
hill
though.
you're choosing to die on?
I can't believe that Fox Eye is a trend because if you told like
Yeah.
15-year-old me that like doing this was going to be cool in 10 years, I'd be like, what? Even when I look at pictures and I'm like, why do my
Yeah.
eyes not feel Asian enough now all of a sudden? I was too Asian and now I'm not Asian enough. Um, but I think like
I know. I think I always say this. I'm like, why are all the IG filters so like chink eye?
literally,
Literally.
even just something as simple as like looking at the pop culture and the culture that is available from your motherland instead of looking to white institutions to represent you kind of thing. Like I
Mm.
think it's going to take time until there are institutions outside of just white ones in the West that are able to have like diverse representation. But in the meantime, being able to learn more
Mm.
about what's happening or what has been made in your mother country is also going to be something that can empower you as well. There is so much to learn from that. Like even for me recently, just like watching more Chinese TV and watching Chinese movies, I'm just like, damn, this shit is crazy. Like, how have I not seen any of this? Even just recently, like watching Disney Mulan and then watching old kung fu movies or like war
Yeah.
movies that were produced in China like 10, 12 years ago. It's like how the way that we expect Disney to do something that Chinese people have already done very well for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with you.
Because I was
Yeah.
really disconnected from like Asian pop culture when I was growing up. I didn't go through like a teen K-pop phase. Like my K-pop phase began like 2 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but it was the exact thing of like being like,
Yeah.
oh, look at these pretty
Yeah.
boys dancing in Gucci. Like I've never seen this before.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like also I would say me right now, I consume a lot of Asian entertainment, media wise, movies and TV wise and music wise, because I've said this, but I've tweeted about this. I said I consume a lot of foreign entertainment and a lot of Asian entertainment specifically because I'm tired of only seeing white people and I don't care about their lives and drama.
Yeah.
And that being said, I what you said earlier about looking back at maybe looking back to your own country or looking back at where your area is from instead of looking to be validated by whiteness is so
Mm,
important. Like
mm,
instead of trying to feel validated by obviously a white system made by white people for a white Western population, you are trying to find validation in a system that is not for you and was not built for you. So obviously, it is
mm.
not going to be perfect, and obviously, it is not going to be what you're looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah, so like instead of trying to
Yeah.
feel validated by this white entertainment, just
Yeah. It's like
head back on
self-defeating,
home.
I think. I mean, if you make it,
Yeah.
then that's great. But to expect
Mm.
them to be able to understand or cater is, I don't know. Like, I want to believe that there's room for progress, but at the same time, I don't think that progress will come as quickly as
Mm.
people would like it to. Because even with something like the Disney Mulan, have you seen it? The new one?
No.
Yeah, like even with that, it's just like
No,
that was
I
$200 million budget film, the same budget as Black Panther, and it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
fundamentally wrong in so many ways in terms of and like the
Yeah.
reason why that film was produced is because Disney's or like Hollywood's market is bigger in China than it is in the US now. They know that they can
Yeah, cash
yeah, they
grab.
can make huge amounts of money by making films that would do well with a Chinese audience. So that's obviously why they would
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to make a movie like Mulan and cast the people that they did. But even
Yeah.
then, with such a huge budget, so many people now are able to be informed and to communicate the themes that are relevant to that story.
Mm.
No, nothing was done well. Like, just like basic principles that
Mm.
shouldn't even, like the whole discussion around chi and chi being treated as like a superpower when in reality chi is something that everybody has. Like, that's like a fundamental Chinese
Yeah.
principle. So how can you expect like Chinese people to be like, wow, this is so great, like you've completely cooked like
Yeah.
a central element, like you've added something that didn't even need to be added. So it's just, yeah, like the movie is like fully flopping in China as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like that to me was just
Serves them
such a
right.
huge, yeah, like it's just it just shows like how out of touch these institutions can be. Even if on the surface it's like they're trying, we're helping. It's like at the core of it,
Mm.
it's still all fucked up. So, and it's not going to be as easy as just calling them out for it to change for them.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say they just don't care. And second of all, like this whole representation politics thing, which is obviously I am for representation and I am for minorities gaining a place in entertainment and visually out there publicly as public figures. That being said, like we said before, instead of always looking to the West to validate ourselves, we should be looking more within our own communities that are us as minority groups can make our own content, can
Mm,
create our own stories
yeah.
rather than trying to get validated by some big studio or XYZ to platform. Like
Mm.
we should be building our own platforms. That's why like the whole Crazy Rich Asian thing, like, oh my god, Crazy Rich Asian, like the pinnacle of Asian representation. Like, oh, okay, how is it? They are literally like the whole story is about really, really rich Singaporean Chinese people, obviously, which is not relatable at all.
Yeah.
Like crazy rich. Like the lead is half white. Everyone is basically more conforming to Western ideals of beauty rather than
Mm.
traditional Asian ideals. And it's just cooked up in a very, yeah, it actually doesn't cover that many Asian principles. And
Mm.
yeah, it's like, oh, I'm rich and you're poor. Wow. And
Yeah, the
it's not
class
that
struggle.
revolutionary. Yeah, it's like I've seen this story before and it's not that
I mean, the
exciting.
bar is just so low. So I think
Yeah, exactly.
that was, one stone, which I hope will be in a sea of many, in a path of many, in order to
Yeah, the
allow
first of
or like
many, yeah, yeah.
normalize seeing East Asians on the
Hmm.
screen. But by no means was it like revolutionary for me. I mean, I fell asleep when I was watching it in the
Yeah.
cinema. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think films like that have to be made in order to make steps into
mm,
real, I don't know, more genuine or whatever, or
yeah, more
more exciting things.
diversified
So,
representation. Yeah,
yeah.
but that's
So,
not where
yeah.
people need to stop and be like, okay, we did it, we did it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's understandable that people were excited about it, and I can totally
mm,
see it. But I just think
mm,
it is important to be still critical of things and know,
yeah,
and definitely, as I said before, to contextualize it in our own environments.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's not go
definitely.
goo goo gaga
Context.
just because of that. Yeah, context is key. Context is
Yes.
king.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I feel like the lack of um people being unable to see how these things fit into a bigger picture in literally
Mm,
in regards to anything, um just makes conversations around certain topics and issues really reductive, and then you kind of like just end up in this weird
mm,
loop or echo chamber, um and that comes at the expense of actual progress and discussion.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess you just have to give it time. That's all. That's all I have to say. I'm just trying to mind my own business now.
I agree. I think it's important to know your ground, know where you stand. But like you said in your previous episode, pick your battles because a lot of the battles that people are fighting just not worth fighting for.
Yeah,
You
exactly. And when you just turn your phone off, it's like life is so peaceful. So
know? It is peaceful.
thanks so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Stay safe and well, and I'll speak to you in the DM.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you too. Bye.
Okay. Ciao.